Welcome to DS Trucks. So I got the question, how do you wire your upfitter switches on your Ford trucks? That is what we're going to talk about in this video today. My name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. So let's jump right into it. How do you wire your upfitter switches? On my truck, I've got some lights here on my upfitter switch number 6. This upfitter switch is available for power when the engine is off. I believe it's 5 and 6, and the rest of these need to be, the rest of these switches need to have the vehicle on in order to run. But that is optional for these two to have power on. There is something that needs to be done in order to achieve that. But on mine, I have the upfitter switch tied into the rear running board, but I'm going to be adding more lights to that in the near future. So number one, how do you wire this up? What is all involved? So this system basically is connected to relays and fuses. So it's more than just up here. There's wiring that's also under the hood, and there's also a fuse block under the hood. So when you look under the hood, let's pop this real quick. When you look under here, over here by the passenger side, you will see a panel. And I believe it is this one right here. Let's look. This looks like it. So you'll see relays, and you will see fuses. These big 40 amp fuses are for when the vehicle is off. It's, I believe, 5 and 6. Don't quote me. I gotta double check the manual. But you can see all these relays and all these fuses. So it's real nice because the upfitter switch system gives you the ability to fuse your wiring, so that if there's a short circuit anywhere right here by the battery, you have it fused and it won't burn down the truck. Hopefully. The one caveat to that is the fact that these are fused to 25 to 20 amps or even 40 amps. So pretty big fuses. So these big ones, you might want to run like a bigger air compressor or something on the 40s, something like that. And on the 25s, most air compressors could probably run on the 25 as well, but you'd have to just kind of look at the draw and everything that's involved to make sure that it's not overloading the system and possibly blowing the fuse. But also the danger is not putting enough or a small enough fuse on a big enough wire to achieve proper fusing. So if you were to just run a light on a 25 amp fuse, then it might not actually blow the fuse and burn the wire. You want the fuse to pop and not burn the wire. So as far as finding your wires, you have to, in a lot of cases, remove your battery here and your battery tray to see the wiring. Mine I've already exposed and they were down in there, so I could get to mine. But the reality of the situation here is, if I'm going to wire anything to my wiring, I'm going to want to remove the battery and battery tray in order to be able to get in there. And it's hard for me to even look and climb up here, but there we go. So I can reach under here and I can grab this wire, but as you can see, the tightness of this, it's not practical for me to actually do any work on this. Usually this is bundled up and it's taped up underneath. So when you look inside your owner's manual, it will give you a code. The owner's manual will give you a color coordinated code and tell you what wire goes where, what color wire goes where, and it's right in the owner's manual. You can also look it up online, and that'll show you what colors go to what and where. So things to keep in mind: you have to fuse for the wire size, for the smallest wire size in the circuit. So you might have to actually put a fuse in line if you're going to be running something like lights, like little LED lights that have the small wiring. You might want to put like a small 5 amp fuse in line. Just double check what the wiring you have, whatever wiring you're using, and check the gauge to make sure that there's enough protection that the fuse will pop before the wire will burn. But anyway, let's go into the garage and look at some of the necessary tools to wire anything into your upfitter switches. See you guys in the garage. All right, guys, here in the garage, looking at my little electrical kits, and I know it's a messy area. I do from time to time come in here and reorganize all this stuff, but I just keep these tools here on this rack. But over here you see my electrical stuff. Some of the basics would be obviously a pair of wire strippers. This is a Milwaukee set. It's okay, it's not the best, but it does get the job done. Another thing that's nice to have is a voltmeter. This is my test light. It's cool because it tells you the voltage. It's not a full blown out multimeter, but it lets you test circuits, probe wires. It only works when you ground, and then you put the probe on the positive and the ground on that little clip, but it gets the job done, tells me voltage and things like that, and this has been pretty useful. Another important key component, this was ordered on Amazon, came in a broken little package, but shrink tubing in all different sizes. So all different sizes shrink tubing, real nice to have. Another thing that is good to have is wiring. This is a 2-wire right here. There's a 1-wire somewhere in here, probably in this is my little electrical bag. I stole it from this impact, and I'm just gonna have to run the impact here in this bag with the other smaller impacts. But this little electrical bag has mostly everything. If I had to do something on the fly on the road and throw this in the truck, I could use this one. But there should be a spool of wire, single red, but I don't see it here. I don't know where it's at. But one thing that's important to have is a spool of wire that just has 1 wire. This has 2, which is cool, but you don't really need 2 wires. You only need 1. The upfitter switches are hot, they're positive, and you want to just ground to the nearest ground strap or frame, or even add a little ground strap to the frame somewhere or body somewhere to get the ground. So you don't need to run a ground all the way to the battery or anything like that. It's fine just to run your ground straight to the frame or somewhere near where you are. There's ground straps all over, and you could just tie into one of the ones that are pre-existing or just add a new ground strap. So another thing that's nice to have is fuses. You can also get a little fuse box, a little fuse block, or just real simple little fuse holders if you want to add a fuse in line. I do have some more electrical stuff in here where we have a little. These I just saved from old projects, but yeah, I could power this and have a little fuse holder. This one is 15 amps already in it. I could take this 15 amps because I think 15 is too much for an LED light. So here's an LED light, and you can see how skinny and small gauge this wiring is. So for an LED light system, I would go ahead and put the smallest fuse on there that I can, so that the fuse would burn before the wire. So for that, I would be running, this is a 2 amp, that's probably too low. I would be running a 5 amp. But if you really wanted to be safe, you could just run smaller ones. You could try a 2 amp. 2 amps probably too low. But if it pops, you just put in the next one higher. That's 3. So I believe 3 is probably okay for that. But if you get multiple on there, you might have to step up to 5. But 5's probably okay. And then I'm 15, this is 7.5. So 7.5 is probably okay. But this kit's real good because it goes. And what I would do, and here, I think it says it here, but you can look online. Usually when I do anything, I just look online because I don't know all this stuff by heart. But I can look online and see what kind of amperage and what gauge wire in the distance and all that stuff to get the proper fuse, so that it's not popping all the time and it's actually protecting the wire. So better safe than sorry. Typically it's pretty solid little system, but you need a fuse holder, something like this, to tie in if you're doing lights. If you're doing something a little bit heavier where you can just use a 20 amp or 25 amp fuse that is already in the upfitter's system, then good. Lights is one of those things that you really want to just, tie in something that's a little more sensitive to blowing that fuse in a 20 amp fuse. So some other cool things that are nice to have would be some connectors. This allows you to create a connection and make something that can be removed and installed relatively easily. Let's look in here. Things that are good to have, little eyelets, so that you can make, like I said, shorter runs. So you can make a red wire can go straight to your battery, or straight to your upfitter switch, because that leads hot. And then you could actually make a ground strap using an eyelet that ties into your frame or somewhere to a different ground that's right near where you are. All right, over here we have some connectors. So these connectors have been pretty good. They're IP67 rated, good for marine. I've had good luck with these. Some are crimp. These ones you crimp, and these ones you just apply heat and it melts. You've probably seen these online. They are good. They work good. They hold strong, everything, but they are bulky. So if you use these, your repair is not going to look super original or anything, but it will work and it will last. I've had zero problems using these in some extreme conditions, like salt spreaders, like right on the spreader. They hold up good. But if you really want to do the OEM clean installs, like a PowerStroke Tech Talk style install where it just looks factory, then you want to just get the small little metal crimps and use shrink tube on top of those, because they take up less space. These bulky things take up a ton of space. In here we have a side tap. So the problem with these is when you tap the side of the wire, you clamp this thing around the wire. If it's in a rough area, it will corrode, and that's not good. So you could probably use one of these where there's just straight up no moisture, no corrosion, nothing like that. You could probably put some tape around it or something so it doesn't, corrode. And I wouldn't use a high load on this. It's not the best solution. It kind of side cuts the wire, weakens the obviously the insulation and stuff on the wire. So not watertight or weatherproof or anything, but could be used in a pinch, in a spot where there's just no chance of moisture. Okay, next we have one of my favorites. I don't know where my spool of wire, single wire went. I need to find that. Maybe one of the kids got to it. But this is not a solder iron. This is a brutal butane torch. So this one's from Dremel. I enjoy it. It works well. It lights. This one's getting kind of older, but this thing only costs like $20. So definitely worth the investment. There it goes. It's lit. Definitely worth the investment. Super easy to light. Super steady. It's not a solder iron though. I haven't really been successful soldering with it, but it has been good for just melting those connectors. It doesn't work that great for soldering. It will do it, but it does not work as good as a soldering iron. So that's kind of pretty much it to the upfitter switches. It's very simple. You check the manual for the color code on the upfitter switches. You run the positive lead. You fuse it to the wire size. You Google that real quick. I don't know all the wire sizes and fuses and stuff like that offhand. You protect the wire with a fuse, and then you install your whatever. If you can count on the fuses that are factory installed under the hood for something that needs a 20 amp or 25 amp or 40 amp fuse, some bigger items, then you could just use those fuses that are there. But for lights, it's probably recommended that you add a smaller fuse to protect the light wiring, because light wires use thin wires. But anyway, this is DS Trucks. Thank you for watching. The battery's about to die on this camera, so I got to turn it off. But comment below and tell me what you think about this video, and I will respond to as many as I can. And let me know if you are interested in seeing me install some lights on this 250. It is time to put some lights on this truck. Being an aluminum truck, it's impossible to just put a magnetic light on it. But the difference in this truck is there is no upfitter switches. So we'll be installing lights and installing our own switches on this truck. So if you'd like to see that, subscribe to the channel. But anyway, this is DS Trucks. See you guys in the next one. Over and out.